projectile weapon power levels being out of control. I'm sure many of you have heard this leading up to the release of 3.18. And people are talking about the buffs to projectile weapons, how they're able to shoot through shields, and oh my god, it's going to be Armageddon. Everyone's going to be using projectile weapon setups, and these ships, this ship here, that ship there. Oh my god, what if we put an ADSB or whatever it is, the Gatling gun, mounted on the back of a Buccaneer? What happens then? You know, and people are kind of freaking out about it. Well, some people. I, for one, think it's a good thing. It's a great thing. It's a necessary thing, and it's something to be celebrated. Now, you might be sitting there going, oh, what are you talking about? It's going to ruin the game. It's going to upend the game. Yes, exactly. Exactly. This is something that has needed to happen for a long, long time. And not for the reasons that you think, not because I favor ships that might work better with projectile weapons. Not really. As a pirate, as someone who wants to go out in the universe and who is planning on not being able to land at every landing site and having to go protracted amounts of time without being able to go to a station and reload and rearm my ship, you can see the obvious reasons why I may prefer energy weapons, and I have focused heavily on using energy weapons while playing the game. But the reason why I'm so bullish on this, and the reason why I'm so happy with this change, is because sometimes the hand of fate has to be forced. Sometimes people don't really realize what's in front of their face until it happens to them, until they go like, oh, you know what, here it is. Here's the living proof of why I need to do this thing. It's now living, breathing. It's in my game. Everyone sees it. No one can deny it. There's no escaping from this. It's a real thing. And that is the projectile weapons change in a nutshell. That is what this is going to cause. This is going to have some incredible knock-on effects for CIG internally, because you can say something to a game developer, right? And you can say, no, you're wrong, and doing this is kind of dumb, right? We talked about this when hover mode became a thing. Before hover mode was ever released to the player base, we shot it down and we said, no. Whoa, I understand what you're going for. I understand what your aim is. You know, ships hanging at awkward angles and being able to float over a planet. Yes, it looks a little bizarre, but the solution that you're going for isn't it. And, you know, boldly proclaimed that they were gonna push this one through. And it showed up in game, and man, I want to track down that one video when we were talking about hover mode, because I was so lucky that I was standing outside of the landing area in Lorville, and I was able to film this wonderful shot of kind of looking up at my character, and in the background you can see players trying to land their ships at Lorville, and they're crashing and exploding all over the place. And it was just this wonderful kind of like spontaneous moment where all these other players were just trying to handle this new system and failing horribly, and then CIG admitting, yes, it was a bad idea and it all went wrong. And this is going to have the same effect to a certain degree, because the projectile weapon change, we need a justification for projectile weapons in the Star Citizen universe. We do, for the very reason that I just gave you, just from a pirate point of view. Essentially, energy weapons are infinite ammo, right? They are absolutely infinite in terms of, you know, the amount of ammunition that you can carry. So obviously you would default to a weapon system that financially requires a lot less maintenance, because you don't have to pay for ammunition. And practically, when you're out in the field and you don't want to have to go back to a landing pad, you don't have to. And so you want to try to make your ship as independent as possible, whether it's just simply the idea of going out and doing bounty missions, even if you're a 100% law-abiding player. The efficiency of just being able to go bounty to bounty to bounty to bounty, rather than going from one bounty to the next bounty and then back to station to reload your guns, one bounty two, and then go back to station to reload your guns. It's far less efficient. So projectiles have to have a justification to exist in the Star Citizen universe. And to be perfectly honest, CIG has not really provided that justification yet. And I mean, there was that reverse the verse question where, well, I think it was, oh God, what was his last name? Day. If you remember reverse the verse way back in the early days, he ended up leaving to go to Blizzard. His last name was Day. His wife, I believe, worked on that kind of community team in the very, very early days. But he answered one of my questions about projectile weapons. And he said, oh, no, we're going to balance it. And for years since, the projectile weapons were never truly balanced. And this is kind of an attempt to give projectile weapons a justification via more damage bypassing shields at, of course, the cost of, once again, finite ammo reserves. And this is CIG trying to find that balance point. But obviously, as all of us can see, this is a disaster waiting to happen. So why am I so happy about it? Because what it's going to do is it is going to slam the door in CIG's face on this idea, and it's going to say, listen, you want to do these changes to projectiles, that's great, but we need the armor system first, and not the bullshit armor system that is in the game right now, the real deal. And because I know that there's always somebody who's like, oh no, there's armor in the game. No, it's just a static value. It is not something like shields where you can change even the mundane variety of shields that we have in the game right now. More hit points, less energy consumption, less EM, less heat signature. There's a little bit of variation there. Not much, but there is a little. Armor, we don't have that. Do you want to have lighter armor and maybe more maneuverability, less weight? That choice isn't there. Do you want heavy armor at the cost of maybe speed and maneuverability? That choice is not there either. And that we've heard at different times that, that they've struggled with the idea of how they're going to physicalize armor to, I guess, give it some kind of visual telltale for other players. I don't understand. Like, it would just be, the plating that's underneath the paint that already exists. So the ship would essentially look the same. It's just the composition that would vary, and you would buy it from different sources. It would kind of be sprayed onto your hull, kind of, I guess, an inverse of the scraping mechanic, and then you would go from there, whatever you chose. And so we need the armor system in game. We've needed the armor system for a long, long time. Energy weapons are answered in the game by shields. Projectile weapons are answered by the armor system. Yet no real armor system exists. CIG has to implement this. It's sort of, in a way, it forces CIG to recognize that they can't keep taking shortcuts in the game's development and saying, oh no, this is for balancing. This is to make projectiles more, more relevant in the game. Yeah, that's fine. That's your aim, but in order to do that, you need to lay in the supporting the supporting foundation that is going to be the armor system, because the armor system is what directly, kind of provides the counterpoint to the projectile weapon. Sorry, I just hit something on my desk. That is, one cannot exist without the other, and you just can't kind of flub it and just say, oh, well, let's try this. No, in order to do this, you need that. You can't, it would be like if we were to put mining in the game, but there was nowhere for you to sell the minerals. What's the point? And so it's good that this thing is happening, not for the actual, quality of life in the Star Citizen universe, because it's going to get quite rough for a little while, but it's going to force CIG's hand. It's, it's yet another one of these situations where it's like, oh, we got a brilliant idea, and it's like, actually not all that brilliant. Slow down there, hero. Things are not that easy. You got to do the legwork. You can't just say, oh, well, this is the solution, implement it. And it's just like, no. You actually need to do the work. You need to put in the armor system. You need to lay in more foundation with these ships. These ships have been around for a long time, and to be perfectly honest, they are extremely uncomplicated, I think would be a generous way of putting it. And there's a lot more depth to these ships other than just keybinds, and just in the systems that you can implement in them, the variety or the variation in in just the performance of one ship between various equipment that we don't have for quote unquote ease of balancing reasons. We don't have a tremendous variety. Many weapons, especially at the larger gun levels, all shoot to the same range, have very little variation in terms of heat generation and whatnot. They're very, and it's done that way specifically to make it easier to balance the game, so they say, but at the same time, it never lets us really explore the unique characteristics of different weapons. But in order to explore those characteristics, you need the countermeasure system to it, right? And so it's kind of forcing CIG to recognize the fact that, once again, no shortcuts, no omega easy eureka moment solutions that, oh, here it is, problem solved. It's like, no, it's a lot more complicated than that with these things. When you kind of introduce a change like this, and you introduce a weapon system that becomes wildly overpowered, there is going to be that initial phase where some players are going to exploit it because, of course, why not? And they're going to enjoy the hell out of it. And the game company is going to get obviously they're going to get a response. They're going to get a response from their community, but it's going to be the response that it may not be the nice response that everyone's hoping for. Like, every message has to be delivered with, supportive, happy comments or whatnot. It's going to be probably a little bit rough around the edges, but at the same time, it's the thing that they once again need to hear, that there are no shortcuts. You can't just say, oh, well, here, no, you have to do it right. I often hear, people say things like, well, we're taking the time to do it right. Okay, let's see it. So I think it's a good thing. Now, on the other end of the equation, aside from the developers, for the players, this is going to be an interesting wake-up call, because once again, the people who are going to go out there and they're going to take the projectile weapons because they're so overpowered and because they're so strong, the people who do that are now going to have to face a reality that is drastically overdue, in my opinion, which is the idea that, oh, now I have to really think about the ship in a sense of, oh, I have to go get ammunition. Oh, I have to go get refuels and all that. We have a refueling mechanic in the game, but because fuel is so non-existent as an everyday concern, as a minute-to-minute concern, we don't really have to face it, if you have enough fuel in your ship to last for 4 hours, but the general life expectancy of a pilot is 3 hours, then you're never going to really have to deal with fuel in the Star Citizen universe. And the same is true in this situation for players, is that they've never really had to face ammunition because many players have just been using energy weapons. So having to face these realities is going to, the same for the Star Citizen developers, it's going to bring this into stark focus for a lot of players. Like, oh, there's a bonus here, but there's also a drawback. So am I really willing to deal with that? It kind of pushes people away from the idealization they have in their head, and it pushes them into the practical day in and day out realities of running that build or running that setup, which is oftentimes what kind of allows us to flush out the kind of fantastical, not really grounded in reality ideas, and focus more on practical day in and day out, what's really going to work in terms of a ship build in the game. But once again, in order to properly do this and properly evaluate this, we do need the armor system in game. So I'm very happy that this is happening. I know that this is not going to be a huge quality of life increase for the player base. It's going to be a little bit of the Wild West. But realistically, I do believe that that's a good thing. And I do think that even though it's a little bit of pain up front, especially for the player base, it's going to be a little bit more of a slap in the face for CIG, but maybe a slap in the face that they need and a kick in the ass to, get certain other parts of the game done. And, the things that are drastically overdue. Because, to be honest, even a very entry-level, basic, tier 0 implementation of armor like we have for shields is long overdue. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.